Okay, so this is a follow-up to reactive abuse. Um, One of the things in the article that it suggests is to become responsive instead of reactive. But it sounds a lot easier than it actually is. And here's why. Reactive means that it is automatic. Just like if you were to mix vinegar and baking soda, that automatically creates a reaction. You cannot stop that reaction. That is what is meant to happen when those two things mix. So it is the same thing when you are being abused. It is your natural reaction to thwart abuse. That is your natural reaction. But the key to reactive abuse is creating triggers that cause the behavior. And those triggers can be very covert in nature. And sometimes the abuse is covert in nature. Remember, my entire channel is about covert emotional incest and subtle abuse. So if you do not recognize those things as abuse, you will have the reaction without that's why that's the key to it, is that all your triggers are surrounding subtle abuse and all your triggers are subtle. So it looks like you are the abuser. Okay. So I'll give you an example. I actually just used one of my triggers as a title of a video, and that was "Do me a favor." All of my sexual assault started with that phrase, "Do me a favor." And it kind of just depended on the setting. It depended on certain things that would get the reaction that they were looking for. But I did not consider what was happening to me sexual assault because of my lack of understanding for consent meant that I had no understanding that I was being abused. But do me a favor, my mind. Remember, the subconscious knows even if your conscious does not. So your subconscious knows something is wrong. And that is what that's what subtle abuse is. It messes with the subconscious. Okay. So as I'm being subtly abused, they are setting triggers for these abuses that I have no idea is going on. So when a coworker says, "Do me a favor," and I begin to cry, I look unstable. And I don't know why. Or when he says, "Do me a favor," and I start screaming and yelling, I look unstable. But without knowing, one, that I'm being sexually abused, and two, that "do me a favor" is the trigger, they will always have the upper hand in making you react. Once you figure out what the trigger is and what the abuse is, that is when the trigger is disabled and you are now switched into responsive. A lot of people have a sentiment about me that they want me to take accountability. But taking accountability, that whole construct is made by abusers. And when you say that, that lets me know that you have a predisposition for a lack of empathy and that you have abusive tendencies yourself, because you will blame someone when they have a lack of knowledge, right? So, if you don't know that you're doing something wrong, I cannot be mad at you. That's why I have so much forgiveness for so many people, and why when I correct, I say it's okay, because we were not given this knowledge to protect ourselves. All right. So I am actively healing because I am able to quickly identify what the problem is for any situation, and I'm always able to come back and apologize if I in fact do something wrong. But there's very little that I do wrong. I cuss people out, and it's after you trigger. So who's actually in the wrong? Remember, reactive abuse will cause an insult. If you're intentionally triggering me and you know that you are, and I come back and curse at you, I did not put out bad energy. You did, and you got your reaction. And because you know what my trigger is, you are the instigator. Okay? And you are calling upon, it's basically like calling the karma upon the victim. That is what's happening. You're switching roles with the victim because they need to respond instead of react, but you know you're intentionally stepping on that trigger, right? So you're being emotionally violent and expecting no violence back. That's not normal. But again, the reason that accountability is a false construct is because without the knowledge, you cannot take accountability. You can't fix it. You can't do anything without the knowledge first. You're just ignorant. And you are responsible. Again, you are responsible for your ignorance, and you're responsible for gaining knowledge. That's why I have accomplished what I've accomplished, because I have searched for the knowledge in order to fix this, not just for me, but for you as well. Okay. And so then you have the issue of your triggers have to be presented to you in order for you to work on them. If you're not having, like, for instance, I was having issues with the man of the hour as far as my triggers go, because I was not communicating with him or not interacting, not looking at his channel, not doing anything. Because I wasn't doing that, I wasn't getting the triggers that I needed to solve an issue. Once I solve that issue, the trigger is disabled. The issue with the cards a couple weeks ago when I cussed the readers out and said, kiss my ass. The reason that I didn't react before is because I had not acknowledged the rules of codependency. Without acknowledging the rules of codependency, I did not recognize that there was a trigger there in regards to those rules. And seeing them in the cards was a trigger. I then realized, okay, the reason this is a trigger to me is because I know that it is the rules of codependency, and that bothers me. So now we disable that. Every single time a trigger is brought to me, I learned how to investigate that and how to quickly disable the trigger. Now I've seen those cards yet again, and I have not had any issue seeing it, but it comes with disabling the trigger. Without that, you cannot be responsive. And without the knowledge, you cannot take accountability, and you cannot actively fix the issue. So that is why accountability is a false construct, and that of those who lack empathy and are abusers.